Hi guys, Ash the Horse here, and I just want to talk a little bit about what kind of things I do to balance combat on the fly, because we all know balancing combat can be pretty tough sometimes, so I just wanted to talk a little bit about the things that I do that can make it a little bit easier behind the screen. So the first thing that I typically do is when I'm working with sort of horde battles, like, a bunch of goblins, I never have this specific number in my mind. I always do the best I can to have some sort of, you could call it a release valve, more or less. For example, if there's too many at the beginning, there's a way for some of them to have to run away if something comes up. Like maybe you kill a couple goblins and the morale breaks down, so a couple of them run away. Another thing I do is I kind of think about, okay, well, you start the battle with 3 or 4 goblins and your level 2 party ends up being able to wipe them out way too quick. You could have more goblins come in from the other room, for example. So I never start off with a specific number already set in stone. That's actually something you'll kind of notice is going to be a bit of a theme with balancing combat, is nothing's really set in stone. All your options are pretty malleable. So that's one way I work with like horde battles. But when we're talking more about like one big monster, like a T-Rex, any large beast type monster, I never have the exact hit points set in stone. I have what I believe they're going to be, right? Maybe it's 150 hit points, right? But if as over the course of the battle goes on, they're doing some pretty, the party's doing some pretty strong hits on this T-Rex. It's been a couple rounds and it's been taking a lot of hits, but due to its resistances or whatever, it seems like it actually has, way more hit points than it reasonably should. Sometimes you have to kind of tweak those kind of things on the fly to make it more, like what would make more sense. Of course, I have a little experience with the real T-Rex, but in my mind's eye, this T-Rex was supposed to reasonably be able to take 5 to 10 really powerful hits before it goes down. But if it's tanking 10, 15, 20 pretty decently sized hits, you're like, okay, well, this is a little stronger than I intended it to be. You can kind of dial back some of those hit points behind the screen, so one of the next few hits will actually take it out. So one other thing that I do for kind of a little more bigger complex type monsters is I will add a cooldown to their abilities, and this is a little more of an advanced thing, so you have to make sure you're pretty comfortable with everything else before you try and add one more thing to your plate. But sometimes I will effectively add cooldowns to their abilities that don't already exist, like the recharge on a Dragon's Breath, where you have to roll a d6 and then if it's between 4 and 6 you get it back, right? Well, it's kind of like that, but I would kind of make a note of whatever I decide that number is going to be for this particular creature's ability, and then basically roll for that each turn. Behind the screen, my players don't even know this thing has a cooldown when I've retroactively added it as a way to slightly nerf the monster. So those are kind of my 3 bigger ways that I will balance combat on the fly. I very rarely nerf dice rolls. Actually, very frequently I roll my dice in front of my players, but I very rarely, fudge dice rolls, just because, I don't know, to me sometimes it takes away from rolling dice in the first place. When it comes to combat anyway, it's very, very unlikely that I'm changing anything. If I think that something is having too high of a damage output, sometimes I'll reduce its to hit bonus. So if it normally gets +7 to hit, I might reduce it to a +5 to hit, so it's not hitting quite as much to hit those big amounts of damage that it's still doing. Yeah, those are just some of the kinds of things that I do to balance combat on the fly. Thanks for watching.